All right, we're back with another high ticket sales role play. I have Melek, who's going to be the closer for a trading offer, and we have Zion, who's going to play the prospect for us. We're going to jump into all of the subtle nuances of the discovery and break down each of the different things that you need to be doing on your sales calls so you can close more deals and make more money. So without any further ado, Melek, kick us off with your opening question.
Awesome. Cool, Zion. So, what is the biggest challenge you're having with becoming a profitable trader right now?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest challenge is just the consistency. I'll find myself kind of maybe seeing like a quick win with a specific type of approach and then it being consistent and then just trying something else, but I can never build like consistent returns, I'd say.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sorry, pause. Folks, put in the chat, what was the number one thing you noticed for that first section there between Melek and Zion? Let's see if anybody spotted the same thing that I spotted. And it's probably the most pronounced version of this that I've seen on any of the calls. George, what do you mean by way different energy? Braden, sharp opening question. Nikhil, opening question was fast. Melek was fast. In my opinion, I've never heard someone do the opening question with that much. We teach it as voice to impact ratio for those that were at the recent live event. I think Melek's just force with that opening question was amazing. Usually when people are doing the opening questions, it's coming out, but it's a little bit like there's not really the certainty and the confidence. And I've done this a million times. I know what I'm doing. I'm cracking straight into my opening question. That is the level of energy that you need to bring to that first 3 seconds of the call. All right. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge with blank? That was fantastic energy from Melek. If you do that on every call, you'll start pulling your prospects with you through the rest of the discovery. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody noticed Melek's energy behind that opening question. Just because the opening question is the only, call it scripted thing that we do, doesn't mean that you should just like mumble it out. Okay, so in your opinion, what's the biggest challenge with blank? It should be, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that you're having with blank? And you have that certainty, you have that leadership straight from the opening. All right, keep going, folks. Great stuff.
okay, Zion, you were kind of cut off, so are you gonna continue with it? It's a bit of an awkward pause, but
Yeah, so just basically like the consistency. I tend to, see some success with one approach change, but I can never build consistent returns. I'd say is my biggest challenge.
okay, so currently you're lacking those consistent results, and you also mentioned that you can necessarily keep up with one specific approach. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long have you been trading?
For the past 6 months now.
Okay, for the past 6 months. And have you been trading with your own money or have you been utilizing prop firms?
It is my own money, yeah.
Okay, so we're about to wrap up the month. So far in June, how much money you made from trading?
Probably like 300 bucks. Like I'm pretty close to even.
Okay, so in June, 300 bucks. What about May?
May, I was negative, probably like just close to even so, but like down 100, I'd say.
Okay, so in May, you're down 100. And when you mentioned that you're struggling to stick with one specific approach, I'm curious, how many strategies have you changed over the past 6 months?
I mean, like day to day, I'll probably change like depending on like the charts, I'll be honest. Like it just like I'll find myself just switching maybe too much, but it just like depends on, the data it's giving me, but I feel like I don't have enough consistency to just feel confident in one approach, if that makes sense. So a lot.
Okay, a lot. Can you give me a ballpark range?
I mean, I kind of bounce between like three or four different ones per month. So
Wow. Okay. So you're hopping from one strategy to another 3 to 4 times every single month. And when you say it changes from day to day, as in just like randomly, is it sort of you have a spontaneous approach to this? Tomorrow you might wake up and totally go with a different approach.
Great.
kind of, yeah.
Hang on. Great what you're asking, Melek. That's what I would have asked as well. Try it not as a leading question. You're saying, is it this? Is it that? Do you do this? Do you do that? How could you
Okay.
phrase that as an open-ended question?
Okay. So when you mention that you are changing strategy every single day, what kind of an approach do you have to those shifts?
Yeah, like I guess it just depends. Like it is a little bit intuitive, like as I'm learning.
Mm,
So it would just depends kind of on what I'm seeing and just like based on what I've learned like from YouTube and like small discords, I'll just implement certain things.
okay. So does that mean you're sort of lacking the game plan? Would you agree with me would you
Lead,
agree
lead,
with me? Okay.
leading question.
Okay. By the way, seeing your face, Josh, it distracts me. And I can
Okay,
tell you get
I can turn my face off. That's
okay,
fair. That's
okay.
fair.
Because I'm like,
So
dang, I just messed up there.
yeah, no, that's true. A
Okay, you
better
said
way
it's a
to
leading question.
yeah. So how could you phrase that not as a leading question? Because you're doing good that you're digging deeper, but you're leading with the digs. You wanna open up the questions and allow Zion to respond. Okay, let me ask you this question. What do you think was the thing that Zion said that we need to dig on the most of what he's just recently said?
The fact that he is just randomly checking out content out there and doesn't really stick to a plan, and that's why he's lacking the consistency.
And so, what is the strategy that he's telling you and telling himself that he's following? What was the word he used?
Hmm. I didn't pick up on a specific word. In my head, it's very random.
Okay, well, that's the problem is that you're not listening to what Zion said and then taking what he said and putting it back to him. You're listening to
Mm.
what Zion said, interpreting it your own way, and then
Mm.
following on from your interpretation. So you're jumping over a step. And if you do that, you'll actually lose trust in the prospect. The word that he said was, oh, it's
Intuitive.
intuitive.
Mm.
Yeah. And he kind of led it a little bit and he said, oh, it's intuitive. And because you didn't interrupt, which was good, he said, based on what I'm learning in real time on the charts and based on my YouTube videos that I'm watching. So then the next question would say, and based on the fact that you're getting that intuition from YouTube and from
Mm.
just whatever's happening in the moment, how do you feel about that strategy?
Oh,
How do you
okay.
feel about that strategy? Now he has to internally reflect and go, well, I mean, I don't really feel like my intuition's very good. Now he's started to break down any desire to continue doing what he's doing, but you've done it through open-ended questions, which is much,
Yeah.
much, much more powerful because now he's having to make a choice. Do I want to say that I like my strategy or do I want to say that I don't like my strategy? Whereas if you ask him, do you feel this or do you feel that? He already knows that you're trying to lead him a certain direction. Now, some prospects will not like that. And so they'll say, no, no, no. And they'll dig their heels in. And then now you've just got an uphill battle. Or some prospects will agree with you and say, yeah, I think my strategy sucks. Problem is, you're now doing the work for them. The more
Mm.
you do the work for them, the less they're bought into making a buying decision at the end of the call.
Yeah, that makes perfect
Okay.
sense.
All right. So keep
Okay.
going from there. But you're digging on the right things, which is good. Keep going.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So Zion, you mentioned that you're getting that intuition from YouTube and content that's out there. How do you feel about your intuition?
Well, I'm just not like really confident in it, I guess. I just feel like I go through like highs and lows. Like when it is working, like, I get hot and I'll stay with it. But yeah, just definitely not fully confident.
Okay. So you're lacking the confidence in your intuition, although that's what you based your strategy off of. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's not just like fully like gambling, like intuition, but like it's just based off of like kind of like my own learnings, like from, like I
Yeah.
said, like YouTube, Discord.
And you also mentioned you hit highs and lows. So let's say this month, how many times do you think your intuition was accurate actually?
Well, I mean, I trade every
Hang on, pause.
day.
You're asking a question for him to give you an opinionated answer, like, oh, I think it was okay or I think it was good. We already know how good it is. He only made $300 and the month before he's down 100.
I wanted to ask like how many times it was accurate so that he can tell me like, okay, 20 times this month actually I lost money off of it.
Yeah, you could do that, but I think it's redundant in the sense of
Mm,
you're getting the same pieces of information
okay.
from different directions, which means you'll take a lot longer on the call. What
Okay.
we needed was his results. $300 last this month minus 100 the month before. Then what we needed, which you did, was why do you think you got those results? Well, my strategy was intuition. Okay, intuition from what? Well, from YouTube videos and from reading the charts. Okay, so your strategy has been watching YouTube videos, seeing what's happening in the moment, and then intuitively taking a guess at what to do. How do you feel about that? Well, as I mentioned, I'm down, you know, $100 the month before, and I've only made 300 this month. Interesting. Let me ask you a question. How many hours are you spending on a weekly basis? Well,
Yeah,
I'm spending
inputs. Okay.
40 hours. So now it's like spends 40 hours, feels these emotional up and downs, doesn't make any money from it, all because he doesn't have confidence, because he told you that his watching YouTube videos strategy and intuitively taking a guess at what to do from the charts as they're moving in real time is something that he's realized now isn't working. Right?
Okay.
None of those pieces of information were redundant. They're all different pieces of information. You don't want to ask some information and say, you know, the same question from a different direction. You know, how's your strategy going? Well, we know how it's going because he's not making any consistent money. Does that make sense, Malek?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay.
I guess in my head, because okay, he mentioned that he's not confident in his intuition, but he still mentioned, highs and lows. So I felt like I felt the need to humble him a little bit there. That's why I think I wanted to be repetitive, but
Yeah, it's
it's a
it's
fair
not a
point.
bad thing to do. I'd rather you do
Yeah.
more work than you need to. But as we're
Yeah.
going through this, what we want to focus on is how do we be effective, which is
Hmm.
getting what we need, but also how do we be efficient, which is
Yeah.
cutting out any of the things that are not necessarily essential.
Okay.
Like
Yeah,
you
that makes
can't
perfect
you
sense.
can't cut out from the call figuring out that he made $300 this month and minus 100 the last month. You can't remove that. You can't remove him having to tell you how he feels about his strategy. You can't remove that. But we can remove him telling you basically the same thing, which is my strategy isn't working. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Good.
absolutely. Okay. You're not confident in your intuition, and what I'm curious about your is your inputs actually, Zion. So on average per day, how much time and energy do you think you're putting into trading right now?
Sorry, Malak. I've probably misled you. I was just doing an example of some other pieces of data that I would gather. There is
Hmm.
a question that I would have asked to probe deeper on what he said already before I'm going to move on to the hours. Any idea what that is?
Wait, I want to think about this.
Sure.
So I don't know, is it early to ask, okay, like where are you standing with sticking to your intuition then? Or is that a bit abrasive?
A little bit premature, but it's a great question. But there's one question that I want to ask before that to really dig him into this decision that what he's doing isn't working. So far, he said, what I'm doing currently made me $300 this month and minus 100 the last month. You then asked him, what are you doing? And he said, intuitively guessing basically from YouTube videos plus from reading the charts. Okay. Then you asked him, how do you feel about that? And he said, I don't feel very confident and I'm having a bunch of highs and lows. We need to go at least another layer deeper on what he's just said there before we get a separate piece of data. What do you think that would be?
I'm not sure.
No worries. Okay, Zion, let me ask you this. Given that you're watching YouTube videos and you're reading the charts and you're saying that you're intuitively, guessing what to do, why are you not confident?
Okay.
Now he's like, well, I'm not confident for this reason, and this reason. Now he's really tied himself down to the reasons that he doesn't have confidence. Imagine if he turns around and says, and you can say this, Zion, you can say something different. Well, I'm not confident because I'm really just trying to piece things together on YouTube and I don't have a step-by-step way to like follow a plan. I'm just watching random YouTube videos. Sometimes I don't know if the person I'm watching is actually legitimate, right? So now he's just backed himself out of his
Mm.
current strategy. Like he can't go backwards at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, if you don't ask that additional probing question, he could say, I'm not confident, but then later on at the call, when you tell him it's 10K, he could say, well, I'm not confident, but I think I might figure it out. He still
Yeah.
has that back door. You want to
Yeah.
obliterate that. So there's no chance that he goes there. So go even deeper. All right, go from there.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that makes so much sense. Okay. So Zion, you mentioned that you're not confident with confident in your intuition when it comes to this. Why is that?
Hang on, be specific. His
Okay.
intuition from what?
From YouTube and content that is out there.
And what is the other thing that he's getting his intuition from? He said looking at the charts.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's it's slightly different, but it's the difference that makes all the difference. Saying, so you mentioned that you're not confident in your intuition. Why is that? Now he's trying to sell himself against his intuition. Much better if you say,
Mm.
why are you not confident with your intuition that is coming from watching free content on YouTube and just reading the charts? Now he's having to tell us and himself a story why watching YouTube free content and him trying to read the charts himself isn't going to work, as opposed to my intuition isn't going to work. We need to know the root input for his intuition, and if he believes that's not going to get him where he wants to go. Make
Wow, okay.
sense?
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. By the way, I saw in the chat, did he also mention Discord groups? Or Zion, did you already mention Discord groups as well? Okay, dang, I
Yeah, I
missed that.
did.
Okay.
I missed that as well. All right,
Okay.
keep going.
Okay, Zion, so you're not confident in your intuition that you get from looking at the charts, checking out free YouTube videos, and also the Discord communities as well. I'm curious, why is that?
Well, I mean, I think the results speak for itself. Like, I mean, I don't want to do anything to be negative, right? So even last month, just finishing down 100, I can't help but be, unconfident.
Can I ask a quick question here, Josh?
Of course you can.
When he says results speak for itself, like I'm getting this urge to really attack this. Okay, but like, didn't you have this? Like, didn't you have these results for the past 2 months, and then maybe even gather more data around his results for the past 6 months, and then be like, okay, why now? Things like that. But I also know, like, still I have to get an idea about his inputs as well. So I'm like in that crossroads.
Don't worry about being in the crossroads. Just note down that you need to cover both.
Okay.
There's certain points in a call, guys, where you're like, oh, I need to cover two different things. Which one do I cover first? It doesn't really matter. There is moments in a call where there's multiple things you need to cover and you just go around in a circle to get everything you need. And there are moments in a call where you've got something that's so red hot. Do not go into gathering a different piece of data. You need to dig on the thing that they've said. Like if
Yeah,
he
this is
said,
red hot, right? I think this is red hot, like him saying results speak for himself.
I mean, it's how to explain it. Yes, it's the most important thing is the fact that he's got lack of results, but you need to gather both of those things you said. You need to gather, additional pieces of data like how long has he been doing this and why now does he feel that this is a time to make a change? But you also need to focus on the fact that he's telling you that he's not getting results. It doesn't really matter at this point which order you do that in. Just
Okay.
make sure you don't forget something you need to come back to.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, understood. So Zion, you said results speak for itself, right? This month you only made $300. Last month you were down $100. Has this been very much the approximate range for you for the past 6 months since you've started trading?
Yeah, I think I have like 4 green months and then 2 red months, but those green months, it's not like life changing. It's just like positive.
Yeah. And what was your strategy during those green months? Was it again just intuition based off of those charts, Discord groups, things like that?
Yeah, it hasn't changed.
Okay. Okay, understood. And I mean, considering like you saying results speak for itself, obviously it's been the case for the past 6 months. So why right now that you're looking to get extra guidance and make a change?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of just thought about like why I even started trading. Like I don't just want to do it for fun. Like I actually want to make, good money doing this. And obviously a strategy that I'm not confident in, I I just don't think it'll get me there.
Yeah,
So that's a
got
great question, but that was premature because we needed to bury him with more data. The
mm,
additional piece of data would have been how many hours has he put in? Then when
okay.
you multiply the fact that he's put in 20 hours a week, 4 weeks a month, which is 80 hours a month, for the last 12 months. I know he said six, but let's just say it actually goes way further back than that since he started trading. He's now spent 960 hours. You then need to know the total positive or negative that he's made, which is probably break even. In other words, he hasn't made anything. So then when you stack that all up and then ask him, has something shifted? So Zion, you've been trading for 12 months following what you call your intuition from free YouTube content and kind of reading charts and reading Discord groups. You spent somewhere in the range of 960 hours and you haven't made a single net positive dollar. So I'm curious, was there something that shifted recently as in regards to no longer wanting to rely on free YouTube content, Discord groups that you're currently in, and your attempts to read the charts? Now, it's very difficult for him to say no. It's also difficult for him to give you a story that's not very moving. Because if he doesn't tell you some significant story now, the prospect unconsciously knows what you're doing at this point. You're basically saying, you've done this clearly unsuccessful method for a long period of time. The likelihood that you change direction to do something different is very slim. Give me a story that I'm going to believe is enough for you to make a change. And you're stacking, let me put my video on. You're stacking the difference between the absurdity of his lack of results, all the time he's put in, the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing, and you now are contrasting that with the likelihood that people do something different and just change direction is very slim. There better be a big story that bridges the gap between the two things. Whereas when the gap between the inputs and the outputs is smaller, the prospect unconsciously knows, well, I only have to give a story that's like this big to kind of bridge the gap. Like you need to spread it out, and then they're aware of like, I've spent 960 hours, I've made no money, I don't know what I'm doing. Plus, this is the reason I wanted to get into trading. Now this person's asking me, well, what's changed? Unconsciously, the prospect knows they better fill that gap in with a massive story and a very committed story. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay, that's really powerful.
Keep going from there.
Where did we leave off? I think I'm just gonna dig into inputs now. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So Zion, on average per day, how much time and energy have you been investing into trading?
Per day, probably like 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. And is that 7 days a week? Obviously, markets are not open 7 days a week, but does that also include your studying as well?
Get in the habit, Melek, of not asking leading questions. How would you ask that as an open-ended question?
Is how many times a week?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So 4 hours, how many times per week is that?
Just 5, the weekdays.
Okay. And when you say 4 hours, is this you looking at the charts or do you include your studies as well?
4 hours is me just like looking at the charts, trading,
Okay.
typically on the weekdays. And then, I mean, like as far as like studying, it's like in and out. So I guess we can round it up to 5.
Okay.
It was another example of a leading question. So just to really drill you on this, Melek, is those 4 hours you doing this or is it you doing that? That was a leading question. You could have said, and what are you doing during those 4 hours? Because now when he says, oh, that's trading, then, which is exactly what you were thinking, you then ask, what about studying? What about watching YouTube? What about learning how to read charts? Oh, well, actually, yeah, I guess I spend another 3 hours doing that. So all of your inputs total about 7 hours a day. Is that accurate? Yes. And because you've done it all through open-ended questions, the guy feels trapped. They're like, oh shit, like I just walked into that. Whereas when you
Mm,
ask it as an as a closed question and you kind of, is it this, is it that, you may get them with the data, but you didn't get them with the feeling that they walked themselves into it. So they have this like psychological backdoor of like, well, I guess she kind of put me in that position with that question.
mm,
And so now they've got
yeah.
this conflict of like, well, the data is showing me that I've done the wrong thing, but I got manipulated by the closer. So now they've got this kind of like mental feeling like they can get out of the trap. Whereas it's like, if you
Oh,
just
okay.
ask them an open-ended question, they're like, fuck, I just answered the question with the data and the data sucks. And now I look bad and they have no way out of it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I ask a lot of closed-ended questions for sure. I
Yep.
have to get better at that. Cool. So 4 hours, 5 times a week. And what about studying?
No, no, no. What are you doing for those 4 hours?
Ah, okay. Okay. Okay, so 4 hours, 5 times a week. What are you doing during those 4 hours?
Those 4 hours, like I'm on the charts, like trading.
Okay. What about studies?
And be specific because he technically didn't say he does studies. So
Okay,
we can't
what about watching free YouTube videos?
change the wording of the question to this. And when do you watch the YouTube videos to
Mm,
develop your intuitive ability and learn to read charts? Oh, well, yeah, I forgot about that.
okay.
All right.
Okay, and what about watching YouTube videos to develop your intuitive ability and to learn how to read charts?
Yeah, I do a lot of like that on the weekends as far as like studying, but I mean in and out like throughout the week, I'll do that as well. So maybe like an extra 2 hours per day on average, we could say.
Okay. How many times a week?
5.
Okay,
And what
got
about the
you.
week? What
What?
about at the weekends? Because he mentioned weekends and then now he's trying to back out of it because he knows what you're doing.
Oh yeah, okay. And what about the weekends?
Yeah, the weekends is where I like study more. So probably like 3 hours on the weekends, like studying. I don't trade on the weekends.
Okay,
Is that Saturday and Sunday?
okay. Is that Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, both days.
Got it. So that's 6 hours on the weekend plus, I think he said three. Did you say two or three during the week? What did you say? Two.
Two.
Okay.
Or
Plus 10.
studying. Yeah.
So you spend 16 hours with your current approach, which is free YouTube content, learning to read charts,
What about the
plus
Discord?
what's that? Oh yeah, we
What
should have
about the
said that
Discord?
as well. Should have mentioned that as well. That would have been in the
Yeah.
question. So it would have been how many
Okay.
hours do you spend viewing Discord, watching free YouTube, and learning to read charts? It would have been in there. So let's just imagine that number was
Okay.
included. So he's now said 16 hours. How many hours did he say he was trading? I missed the numbers. Four.
20 hours.
Yeah. Right.
Like
So
four, yeah.
look at that. It's gone from 20 to almost double
Yeah.
just because we dug into all the data. So you spend 36 hours a week, which is 72 hours every two, which is 144 hours a month. And how long have you been running this approach?
Okay.
To go from there.
Okay. Okay. So you've been spending 36 hours a week, which adds up to 144 hours a month, right? How long have you been running the same approach?
I'd say like it's not like religiously 36 hours. Like, I mean, typically, obviously through the week, I'm trading a lot, but probably like for the past like 8 months, we could say I've been running the approach because since I'm using my own money, like I wanted to make sure like I was prepared, like to actually start trading.
Just to make sure we're on the same page here, I thought you started trading 6 months ago. So when did you start trading?
Right, 6 months, but like, I mean, 8 months I've been like studying. Like I said, I just wanted to like learn first before putting just money on my first day, you know?
Okay. Okay, understood. So 144 hours a month, right? You're barely breaking even, not necessarily seeing consistent results. If we can actually look at that, 6 month result as well, like in total, how much money do you think you made?
I think total, I am in the green for like last month, 300, probably somewhere around like the 300 in total, if I had to guess,
300 in total.
across the 6 months. Yeah.
Okay. So across in total with that 6 months work, you brought on $300 only.
Hmm.
Okay.
So basically, you've made $2 per hour. How much do you make in your day job? I don't know if Melek's frozen. All right. $300 over 6 months divided by 144 hours, although I think that was, I'm not sure if that was 6 months, but anyway, something around that. So I would calculate it down to what he's been making per hour. And it's probably more important to put it in the context of, so you've spent 6 months, 144 hours, and you've made $300. So and probably doing it per hour is probably not the right metric. I would probably want to say, per month. So if we said $300 divided by 6 months, $50, right? That's probably a better context. And then we would be saying, what was it? He's done 36 hours per week, 36.72. Right. So every month you're spending about 144 hours to make $50, right?
Boom.
Notice
Okay.
notice how the choice of timelines can affect how it's perceived. $2 an hour, it's obviously not a good amount, but it's like, well, I spend an hour and I make $2. That's all right. It's I'm spending time and making money. But to put it in the context of, so for the last 6 months, you've put in about 144 hours a month to make $50 per month. When you hear that number, how do you feel? Does that make sense, folks?
Okay. You guys are lagging for me.
Am I lagging, guys? Well, I don't have video on, so I guess not. But is it Melek who's lagging, or is this making sense to you, Zion?
Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
100%. I think just the gap thing, it's like the bigger the gap, the more commitment they have to like you said, the story and actually like making a change,
Yep.
right?
100%.
And then yeah, quantifying it. It's just like anyone who hears that 50 per month, like the return on time is like you have to do something different.
Yep. All right, Melek.
Okay, I'm back.
Did you catch any of that? So we
Yeah.
basically got to 6 months, 144 hours a month, $300 total for the 6 months, which means he's putting in 144 hours a month to make $50.
Yeah. Okay. And then how does that make you feel?
That's probably what I would ask. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But also, I would phrase it as, when you hear that number, how does that make you feel? Because it's telling them, when you hear that, they've probably never thought about that number. They've probably never
Mm,
heard that number. So I'm asking him, how do you feel about the shock factor of hearing that for the first time? And he's like, fuck, yeah, that's ridiculous.
yeah.
And then what would be the next question if he said, oh, yeah, that's ridiculous? What would you ask next?
What shifted now
Nope.
that you know?
Before that.
Why? No, it's obvious. Um,
Is it?
is okay. It's not obvious. I keep assuming, yeah.
So what would you ask next?
Like, why are you feeling blank way?
Yeah, why do you feel that's ridiculous? Now
Yeah.
he's really having to sell himself and dig himself in. Well, I think it's ridiculous because I could be doing a number of other things and making more money. So
Mm,
why have you continued trading, knowing how much time you're putting in and how little money you're making, and following an approach that you're not confident with? Now he's going to tell us one of two things, possibly both. Well, I really want to figure out trading for blank reason. I want to figure out trading because I want to get out of my day job. And I think trading's the way to do it because I've seen a bunch of people figure it out. Okay, that makes total sense. So you want to figure out trading to get out of your day job. You know it's possible. Why hasn't it happened for you? Well, I guess my approach is just ridiculous. Okay, well, you said it's what did he say? You said it's ridiculous that you've spent that amount of time to make that little money. Have you gotten to the point where you're no longer willing to follow a ridiculous approach? Yes.
mm,
Why? Why now? What was that turning point? You've been doing this for 6 months. Was there a recent turning point? Yeah, the recent turning point was this. Why was that a turning point? Well, because of this reason. We're now leaning the conversation to the second half of the call. We've got a bunch of data. There's still a few things we probably want, which is, what is he doing for work and why did he get into trading? Because that starts to tie it to the bigger picture, which is, he's not just trying to make $50 a month. He's trying to actually do something more important. Why does he want to do that? We need to connect it to that. But we're starting to cross the line. Put in the chat, guys, if you can see this. We're starting to cross the line now to selling him, getting into the commitment, getting into the why now, getting into the changes. We've done good data gathering so far. Is that clear, Melek?
clear, and that makes me when I
Yeah, it's a little bit choppy, but I can hear you. Yep.
it's super clear, and I was saying it also makes me realize, like 5 minutes ago, when I tried to ask why now, how early that was. And it didn't make any sense
100%.
to ask it at that point, actually. Yeah.
Massive. Guys,
Okay.
put in the chat if you see that. A great question prematurely will not give you the depth of the answer you want. You'll get an answer, you'll get a story, why now? But the story is to fill in a gap that's this big. So the density of the story, the emotions behind that story is like, well, this happened and that happened and whatever. Okay, that makes sense. And because you're hearing a story as a closer, you're thinking, oh, I got a story. That's good. I've got the why. I've got the why now. Yeah, but you didn't get a massively dense story. And you got to bear in mind the hurdle that you're trying to get people to jump over is two things. The $10,000 that you're about to ask them, plus the fact that they're about to give it to a total stranger to tell you and to tell themselves, I'm going to change direction to do something completely brand new, a completely different approach to what I've been doing for the last 6 months. You better have something big enough to push people over that hurdle. And if you get a
Mm,
little minute story, like a micro story, oh, yeah, 2 weeks ago, my cat died and I realized life's short. So, don't think that's really going to mean you give me $10,000. All right. No
yeah.
disrespect to anyone that had a pet that died. I get that it's significant, but not in the context of we need him to really tell us a massive story to get over a $10,000 investment with a total stranger that's basically telling him, your intuition sucks, you're a retard, you're not doing the right thing, and now we're going to teach you something completely different. Like you're shaming and guilting someone, plus asking them to pay for it. Like you need them to give you a massive story to do that.
Mm,
Okay. And the
okay,
likelihood of
that's
the story
huge.
being big is how big of a gap you've given them to fill in. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going from there, Malik.
Okay. Zion, so you made only $300 in the past 6 months, and considering you've been putting 144 hours per month approximately, right? That means you only made $50 per month, when we just chunk it down. When you hear that number, how does that make you feel?
Hang on, hang on. You got to let him absorb that. You're giving it all to him too quick. So
Mm,
this happened, pause. This happened, pause. Longer pause. When you hear that number, pause. How does that make you feel? When you're giving people something to reflect on, give them space to absorb it. Otherwise, you're asking the right thing, you're saying the right words, but it's just going over their head. They're not
mm,
feeling it. You got to feel like it's a punch in the gut for them. They're like, and then you have to like give them a few seconds to catch their breath and then say, okay, how do you feel? Right. Otherwise, you're just
okay,
punching them in
okay,
the gut and telling them, right, talk, talk, talk. And they're like, and they don't really know what to say. So slow down when you give people
yeah.
information like that. All right.
Okay. So Zion, for the past 6 months, you only made $300 in total. And considering you've been putting 144 hours a month on average, that means you only made $50 per month. When you hear that number, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, like I'm spending way too much time not making enough money.
Yeah. Considering that's been the case for the past 6 months, why did you continue spending time not making enough money though?
Not spending time, spending what type of time, Melek?
Um,
Too much time to
Too
make
much
too
time.
little money. You got to get the details.
Josh is muted for me right now.
Can you hear me, Melek?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
Dang, it says my
You,
connection
you
is unstable.
No worries. You got to get the details. So, given that that's happened, why have you continued spending too much time to make such little amount of money? You got to get the detail. You got
Okay.
to get the details in your
Okay.
words. It's the details that make the difference, guys. All right, keep going, Malik.
Okay. Considering this has been the fact for the past 6 months, why did you keep spending too much time getting little results like this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I've never looked in depth into the actual numbers. I just thought that like my studying was working or that eventually it would.
Did you
Dang,
not?
this
Did you not?
now I'm stuck here.
Okay, well, I'm just going to show you something advanced. So say what you just said again, Zion, and don't say anything, Malik, and everyone watch this. Say what you just said again.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I just never like looked that deep into it, I guess. I just thought eventually that or that it was working or that eventually like it would at some point.
Did you not have an intuition? I mean,
Well,
it's the most appropriate thing to say. It's like, oh, I didn't look into the numbers. Well, you said that that's your approach to trading. You don't look into it. You just take your intuition. So where was your intuition now?
Game over.
Right? Like that's where you're playing chess and they're playing checkers, guys. And if you listen to what people are
Oh.
saying, you're like, how he doesn't look into the numbers. Well, I mean, did you not have an intuition that this approach was not working? No. So given that your entire approach to trading is intuitive, but you're not intuitively able to see the lack of results that you're getting for so much time, how do you feel about your intuitive abilities? Now he's just going to completely fry himself that his intuition sucks. And then you say, okay, so let me ask you, how much longer do you want intuition to be your approach?
Ooh, dang. Okay.
Right? We're playing chess, guys. You're listening to everything they said. You're taking it. He says something like, oh, I didn't really look into the numbers. Okay, well, did you not have an intuition? And now he's probably thinking two things at the same time, which is good. He's thinking, no, I didn't have an intuition. And at the same time, he's thinking, damn, this guy's smart. Damn, this guy's on the ball. Like, I can't win this game. Like, there's a point in the sales call as well, guys. Not saying that prospects are bad, but for the most part of the front of the call, the prospects are trying to play along with you. They're like, "Oh, can I say the right things but not put myself in a hole but still be honest?" And this kind of this like weird dance that's going on of like they're trying to answer your questions but they're also not trying to admit that they're stupid. There comes a point in the call where they're like, "I surrender. Like just take my money. Like I get it. You've won." And it's not a competition with your prospects. I don't mean you won and they lose, but they're no longer trying to be the one that comes out on top because they realize they're not going to win. Like I'm just so much sharper than you and so much quicker than you, which as I've said before with prospects might sound like a bad thing. You might be thinking, oh, do the prospects want to feel like they're the loser? People like being led. And to be led, they have to admit, I'm the follower. Most people don't admit they're the follower at the front part of the call. They're like, I'm the leader. I'm doing intuitive approaches and I know what I'm doing. At a certain point, they're like, you know what? I'm going to step back and surrender and I'm going to let myself be led. How do you get prospects to do that? You have to be so much sharper than them. And when you have those little crisp moments, like that line that I said there about, well, what about your intuition? He's now like, fuck. Like I lose. Like I surrender. I'm not going to try and play this game anymore. Right. Whereas if you don't
Wow.
have that sharpness, you'll get that all the way to the objections, guys. Oh, yeah, it's a lot of money. Can I get back to you? They're still trying to play fucking games with you. This is why I didn't get those objections most of the time, was because they're like, I'm not even going to try and play that game. Like I'm going to lose that game with this guy. Does that make sense? Justin seems, I don't even know what that emoji is, but let's bring Justin up for a second. Let's do a little interim, bring up Justin Liu and see what Justin has to say. Justin always has something good to say. All right, Justin, you're coming up. Share with us what's on your mind.
Yes, I do have something
Justin.
great to say. Man, I was like just listening, and then Josh said intuitive. I'm like, woo! Like that's what I was trying to reflect, Josh, with my emoji. I was like, damn, like that was very calibrated, like very like you're so on the ball that the prospects like that he got me so subtly. He got me, and you're right. After you get caught, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be a good boy now. I'm just gonna play along, and I'll follow you for the rest of the call. So I found that very
Yep.
helpful. Actually, that was great.
Yep. And the irony for all of you to understand, guys, is that's not a position where the prospect feels I lost and I'm going to play along from a place of like obligation. They're actually happy that you won. They're happy that they're on the phone with someone that smart because now they're thinking Zion would be thinking, okay, I've been struggling to figure this out for 6 months. I've now found someone that can lead me to the promised land. I found someone that is smart enough, that is sharp enough, that is present enough with me, which is the secondary thing that the prospect's thinking is not, oh, this guy must have a super high IQ, because my IQ didn't contribute to this conversation. What contributed to this conversation was my presence. So notice the difference. I didn't one up Zion because I've got a bunch of fucking word tracks in my Rolodex. I one upped him because I was so present with what he said, and I'm like, nothing else is distracting me, that now he's thinking I'm going to align myself with a mentor that's present. That's the difference. If you get beaten by someone that has a higher IQ than you may be beaten but you feel resentful because they beat you by being higher IQ than you. But if someone beat you through love, through caring about your story, through being present with you, through listening, it's like you can't be resentful because you're like, this guy got me, but they got me by actually caring about me, by listening so deeply to what I'm saying. There's no Resentment, it's like, you know what? I actually feel good to be led by this person. Like this person cares. You see the difference, guys? Is that
Yeah.
clear? All right, let's keep going, Malik.
Okay, wow. So eventually so should I keep up with the intuition thing?
Yep, go from there. Go from wherever you want.
Okay. But Josh, I like in a scenario where I didn't catch that, or let's say, the prospect didn't bring up something that I could be like so sharp on the ball when we present our theory and they're like, well, I never thought of it this way. How would you actually challenge them?
I didn't understand if you said if they don't bring it up. I mean, conversations always have something where the pieces just come together. That's just always the case.
Okay.
You
Okay.
just
So,
gotta be present. And the other thing is like if you're looking for it, if you're like, where's the bit where I can tie them down, then it won't come up. But if you're just like truly detached and listening, like at no point did I think I was gonna have this time where I could bring back up the intuition and use it against the prospect. It just happened by asking my next data gathering questions. And that's why, guys, the foundation to everything is data gathering. At some point in your data gathering, you're going to have an opening. But all you're trying to do is do the data gathering. It's kind of like, I'm not a big sports person, so I'm probably going to get the technicalities of this wrong, but it's like a sports team is not always looking on the field for where to attack. They're just looking for how to run their plays as it said in the playbook, which is where there's no competition. And if they run the plays in real time as they run the foundational plays, a moment will appear. But you don't plan to find the moments because you don't know where they're going to be. You don't know what the other team's going to do. You just plan to run the play as it was laid out in the playbook. The play is, I've got to gather all these pieces of data. And if you just do that, when you gather the data, you'll be like, holy the shit, there's an opening here. I'm going to go for it. And a lot of you that have been here for a while will see that change in me where I'm data gathering, I'm going relatively slow. And then like, I'll see, okay, I can see the next 7 questions. I'm just going to go for them. And I'll be like, this question, this question, this question, this question, this question. And I'm like, you're done. Like I've just laid down the last 6 questions all in one go. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it, the order of the questions. I'm just thinking data gathering, data gathering, data gathering. And at a certain point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to connect this to this, to this, to this, to this, add up all the numbers and ask you how much longer. And like at a certain point, it just clicks in your head. So if you're
okay.
present on a sports field and all the players are running the plays and you're not thinking about going on a charge, going on an attack, at a certain point, you're like, there's a fucking line here to the end zone. I'm just going to go for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It does. But considering we still didn't cover why he got into trading in the first place, his job, things like that, then do you think it's going to be this like weird jump from one quadrant to another?
Well, I'm not saying that from what about your intuition, I'm going to go all the way to the close. From that,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guy's like, okay, I'm cooked. I might then transition to, I'd have to go back into where my mind was at the call. But at that point of what about your intuition? And he says, oh, well, I guess I didn't have any intuition, whatever. You say, okay, let me ask you this. Why did you get into trading? And I could maybe transition there into why did you get into trading? Okay, got it. You got into trading because of this. Don't call it a strategy. Your approach has been intuitive. It seems like you've now admitted to yourself and to me that intuition isn't working and it's probably never going to work. And then now you can start tying it down to, was there a shift? Was there a recent moment? Why now? How does that connect back to your
Okay.
goal, which is the job or leaving the job, things like that? Is that clear, Malik?
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah.
All right, go
Okay.
from wherever you want.
Okay. So Zion, you didn't have an intuition about that?
Yeah, I guess not. I don't know.
Then how accurate do you think your intuition has been?
You got to be
Yeah.
specific. So given the fact that you've spent 864 hours over the last 6 months and you've only been making $50 an hour and you didn't have an intuitive read that things weren't working, how do you feel about your intuition being your approach?
Okay, I have
Like
to
you
give
got to be
context.
specific. You got to give context.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like, what exactly are you asking him?
Yeah, okay. It's
Okay.
it's pretty much in there. Okay. Well, considering your intuition has been what you've been relying on for the past 6 months, right? Spending 144 hours per month, only making $50. How do you feel about your intuition right now?
Much
Or
better.
how accurate your intuition is, I would say.
Yeah, not good. It's probably not a good approach.
So how much longer do you want to
Too,
rely on
too,
that
too,
intuition then?
too quick, Malik. Slow down.
Okay, then okay. Because I wanted to get a commitment, but okay, I'll switch. Can I ask, have you gotten to the point where
Bet,
you're ready
bet,
to,
better.
yeah.
And I probably wouldn't ask, have you? I would say,
Are you at a
okay.
point?
I would be more curious. I'd be like, when did you come to that realization?
Okay. Okay, then when did you come to that realization, Zion?
Yeah, as you broke it down, I guess right now. I mean, I booked it in the call because I just want to be more consistent, but and you've made me realize that it's my approach, obviously, just there's no way I'll ever be consistent.
Well, I appreciate you being kind and saying that I've given you that realization. If I can be honest, I haven't really done anything. You had all of these answers, and you probably had most of these answers when you booked the call. So
Yeah.
was there a turning point where you realized my intuition isn't going to get me to where I want to go, and I'm going to book a call and get help? Point being, before you answer, Zion, don't let someone tell you, I just came up with it now, because that's giving you giving the closer the power. You don't want the power, because if you're holding the power as the closer, and then at the end of the call you say, hey man, it's your credit card, not my credit card. They're like, well, you've got the power, not me. You want the prospect to have the power, the ownership, the fact that they've come to these realizations. So it's fine if someone says, oh, well, I've only just realized now how bad it is, and they've now realized it's way worse than they thought it was. But you don't want them telling you, oh, I just happened to land on a fucking video call with you randomly. It's like, no, that's bullshit. Like, you clearly had some realizations that you came to. When were they? Why were they? What happened? Now we connect it to the now, which is okay. So you had these realizations, you booked in a call, you've now realized they're a lot worse than you thought. You've had the dots connected for you. What are you going to do now? But we need that timeline to give the prospect the power, to give the prospect the ownership. Does that make sense, everyone? If you just take what he said there and said, oh, I just realized this now, you're never going to sell someone, ever. Impossible. Because he's basically
That's
saying,
unfortunate.
I just randomly realized it now 5 seconds ago. It's like, no, you didn't. You booked a call. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Go from there, Malik.
Cool, Zion. I appreciate you saying that. Obviously, we've been having a chat. That's been the purpose. But do you
Don't say
think
chat.
there has
Don't
been
say chat. Hang on. Don't say
okay?
chat. That sounds too casual. What could you
Did
say
I say
instead?
chat? Okay, conversation. Okay,
Yeah, you could say,
deep
yeah, I
conversation.
appreciate that. We've definitely been going deep here on getting clarity. And so I appreciate that this may have given you more clarity. But was there a moment that you realized something needs to change? What was that moment? We need
Okay.
to, like, if the prospect's trying to say, mummy, daddy, save me, you'd be like, no, 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 you save yourself. Like, don't let them try and give you the savior power, because whilst it might feel good for a moment as a closer, it doesn't feel good at the end of the call where they don't buy and you don't make any commission. And if they're
Oh,
trying to
okay.
say, oh, you're my saving grace, you gave me all this clarity and now you've saved me, it's like, it feels good for your ego, guys, but it doesn't sell people. They need to be telling you, you've helped me connect the dots together, but I already knew something needed to change. They need to be saying, I knew independently, ownership, I needed to do something, right? Does that make
Yeah,
sense? The difference, guys? Okay.
yeah,
All
it
right.
does,
Keep
and
going,
it's
Malik.
almost counterintuitive, by the way. It's so powerful.
Most of sales is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Prospect says, what do you think you should do? Salespeople think you should say, oh, well, I think you should do this, this, and this based on the data. No, that's not going to work. Counterintuitive. I don't know. What do you think? Most salespeople don't think the right answer is to say, I don't know. They're like, well, that makes me seem
Mm,
bad as the closer. It's like, no, it makes you seem like you're going to make the prospect do the work. Most of
cool.
sales is counterintuitive to what you think it's going to be. But to be clear, it's counterintuitive to what you think it's going to be based on matrix conditioning. It's not actually counterintuitive if you sat there with a piece of paper and actually thought it through. If you thought it through for half an hour, If someone asks me a question and I'm going to ask them at the end of the call to give me their credit card and give me money, and I give them the answer, are they more likely to buy or are they less likely to buy? If you actually thought about it, it's very intuitive that that's going to make it worse. It's obviously intuitive if you think about it, that you go, no, that probably wouldn't make them feel like they're responsible for the decision and therefore they're going to be responsible for the result. If I actually get them to think through it themselves, that will probably actually make them feel more empowered. The problem is most people don't think, they just take matrix conditioning and just assume without going through the thought process, oh, that's the right thing and that's the wrong thing. It's why a lot of becoming a great salesperson is the internal mastery, which is actually reflecting on things, having a journal, going for walks in nature, thinking through things. You know, had this sales call the other day, it didn't go the way I wanted it to do, the way I wanted it to go. Why did that happen? Well, I did this. I thought that was the right thing to do. Was that the right thing to do? Well, if I actually think about it a little bit more, probably not. And if you just spend time thinking, which is how people become smart, is you think things through, it all becomes obvious to you. All I'm doing on these trainings is facilitating you to go back within inside yourselves and go, oh yeah, actually that makes a lot more sense. That's probably more logical. I'm not giving you the answers. I'm just helping you realize these things for yourself that you already knew inside. You just haven't thought them through enough. Okay. All right, Malek, keep
Yeah.
crushing it. Keep going from there.
Okay. Zion, of course, I can appreciate you saying that obviously the whole point of this call was to go deep and get that clarity. But I do believe these were things that you were already aware of. So was there a turning point for you that got you to this realization?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm up 300 over across the 6 months, and I'm also up 300 in general. So it's like before like this month, I've made zero returns, and even like 300 isn't something that I'm happy with. So I think just kind of hitting like half a year, maybe like just a 6 month time period is like, okay, like if I'm gonna keep doing this, like I have to change something.
Why is it so important for you to make a change?
Nope, you're trying to sell him. Be curious. Don't try and sell. Be
Okay.
honest, Melek. How do you feel about his response? Oh, it was because I hit the 6 month mark.
Like it's BS.
Why do you think that's BS?
Because you don't just look at the calendar and think, oh, okay, it's been 6 months.
So now phrase what you just said, which is your authentic belief as a question.
As a polite question,
Right? You just said you don't just look at the calendar and go, oh, it's been 6 months. If you change that to a question, so what happened? You just looked at the calendar and was like, oh, it's been 6 months. Just
okay.
ask, just ask it as a question. Then he's probably going to go, well, no, not really. It was this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Don't, if you already know,
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
if you already know that what they're saying is bullshit, then just tell them that, but as a question.
Okay.
What exactly happened, Zion? You got to June and had been counting the months and were like, oh no, 6 months, can't go past that, or what actually happened? Right? Like I'm challenging in the words, but my tonality is like, I think I'm the idiot. Like I can't be stupid enough to believe what you just said. So like there's this there's this contrast between the words that you're saying is like, I know you're talking bullshit, but your tonality is like, I'm not gonna make the prospect feel judged that they're talking bullshit. I'm gonna put myself down and be like, am I really this stupid if I believe what you're saying? So you're putting it back on yourself as a tactic to basically say, I don't get this. Like I'm curious. I don't really understand this.
Okay. So Zion, did you just look at the calendar and thought, okay, I guess it's about time? What exactly happened?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just like I want to make money in this. Like I want to just have like more freedom overall. Like the goal in this wasn't just to, make a few extra $100. It's to just make this my income and then just do what I want on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, I guess you've helped me realize that something needs to change, but I 6 months is a long time in general. So,
Mm. And so you mentioned the goal obviously isn't to just make $100. What do you do for work currently?
I'm a realtor.
Okay, you're a realtor. And are you looking to become a full-time trader eventually and transition out of that?
Ideally, yeah, if I could.
Okay. And how much money would you need to bring in with trading to be able to make that happen?
I mean, I could make like 8K a month and be fine.
All right, pause.
But
I wanted to see how far Melek goes, and I'm glad that Ben put in the chat. So 6 months ago, you didn't want to make more money. I don't get it. The point is, you still hadn't actually got the answer that you needed from that previous question. You just felt uncomfortable of like, I still don't really know how to keep challenging it. If you
Yeah,
don't
that's
know
so
how to keep
true.
challenging it and you just move on because you're like, shit, I want to relieve the pressure here on myself and just get into some other data gathering, all you're doing is brushing it under the carpet and it's going to come and bite you in the ass at the end of the call when you don't close them. Like, I
Yeah,
still don't, like
true.
Ben said, I still don't feel like I'm clear. What was the actual turning point? Oh, yeah, because, he said, oh, it was 6 months and then you helped me realize. Well, I appreciate that, Ben, but I wasn't there holding your hand to get you to book in this call. Don't say that. It's a little bit a little bit conflicting. But the point being is like I wasn't here when you booked in the call, right? So you
Okay.
need to keep asking that question in different ways until you actually get something that's going to close a deal. A
Yeah,
non-negotiable to close a deal is having the pain, having the problem. Another non-negotiable is having the
ownership.
prospect tell you there was a turning point. If they don't
Okay.
tell you that, you're missing like one of the key pieces to close a deal. Okay,
Yeah.
so stay on him, Zion. Stay on Zion Melek until you get a real answer.
Okay. Sure, Zion. Obviously, 6 months is a long time, but 5, 4, 3, that's quite a long time as well. So what exactly shifted for you, to got you to book a call in the first place?
yeah, I just don't, I started this, for it to be the main thing. Like that was my intention, but I just don't see like real estate being something sustainable for me, like long term.
And so, was it something that happened in the real estate side of things that then prompted you to get more serious with the trading and have a new approach? Or was it something going on with your trading that because that is the vehicle you want to use to get out of your real estate, that was a shift? I'm not quite understanding, Zion. Was there something that happened in the real estate or something that happened in the trading that prompted you to realize 6 months only making $50 a month on average, your approach of intuition from YouTube isn't going to get you what you want, right? Before you respond, Zion, the more people don't answer the question and they don't get it, you need to stack in more data to help them
Hmm.
realize, like, okay, this combined with this, combined with this, combined with this, I better come up with a story. Initially, you can ask just, okay, was there a turning point? Like very, very basic
Yeah.
question. Okay, you've been doing this for 6 months. You've only been making $50 a month on average. Was there a turning point when you realized your approach, intuition from YouTube and Discord and, reading the charts yourself wasn't going to get you where you wanted? No, I don't really get the question, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me rephrase it. You said you want to get out of real estate. You've been making basically no money for 5 months. You made $300 in the last month. So on average, having spent 864 hours, you've only made $300. So what I'm not clear on, and I appreciate you said that this call has given you a lot of clarity on connecting the dots together. What prompted you to book in a call to get outside help? I can just keep phrasing the question in different ways, but the more someone doesn't get it, the more data I need to put in the question so they can see the light. They're like, oh, now I understand why my answer wasn't good enough. But the worst thing you can do, guys, is just move on from the question that you still need to ask.
Yeah. And Josh, sometimes I feel like during my calls, I jump from one thing to another, and I'm like, that was a bit of an abrupt
Yep.
jump, And I think that happens because I'm not really getting the answer. I'm not like going deep enough and connecting it to
Mm-hmm.
the next point. It's always me just coming up with my next point.
Maybe realizing that if you truly ask the question that you need multiple times and you still don't get it, having the awareness that all that means, Melek, is you're going to unsell someone. Maybe that will give you a little bit of confidence
Yeah.
that you've got like a plan B. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't care about asking someone the same question 10 times because I know worst case scenario, I'm just going to explain to them what I'm doing and say, okay, Zion, makes total sense. So you're saying that having not made any money for the last 6 months, you hadn't had any realization until you booked in this call. Is that accurate? At that point, he'll probably say, no, that's not accurate. But let's just say he says, oh, yeah, I didn't have any realization until this call. You say, okay, awesome. So at this point, I'd say we don't have alignment. And the reason for that, Zion, is that anyone we would consider bringing into this program that is going to have success, they had been following an approach that hadn't been working. And independently of us giving them more clarity, they had come to a personal decision that they do not want to keep following their own approach. If you haven't had that personal, independent decision, I would say that the likelihood of you having success in this program would be very slim, because if the only reason you've come to this conclusion now is basically me leading you there, then the likelihood of you executing the training on the inside without someone else providing motivation for you, which we don't do, would be very likely to be zero. So if you're telling me that you didn't have any independent motivational realization, I would say that's not something that we can fix and hold you to inside the program. Does that make sense? He'll probably now just turn around and say, well, to be honest, it was this. And then he'll tell you the story. Right? But just knowing that you have that Hail Mary in your tool belt, guys, it just makes you realize, like, I know that I'm just going to keep asking until they really tell me there was nothing. And I know that my outcome is, well, then you're probably not a fit for this program. Okay. I'm going to draw it on the whiteboard again, guys, to make you realize as crystal clear as I can why this is one of those really important things. Is we've got the billiard balls. The billiard ball is going in this direction. And then all of a sudden, the billiard ball starts going in this direction. If we do not know what this turning point is to change the direction, and the prospect hasn't told themselves the turning point, the likelihood is they would actually just carry on in the direction that they were previously going. If they don't tell us, this happened, I'm committed to it, this was the change, and I'm going to stick to going this direction from now moving forward, they have been following whatever they've been doing before, their intuitive approach. They're going to carry on following their intuitive approach.
Yeah.
We need to know what this moment is. It's a non-negotiable on a sales call. And if they just turn around and say to you, oh, the moment was you gave me clarity on this call, then what is happening is the prospect is not seeing cause and effect of changing directions. And if they can't connect this dot of cause and effect and changing directions, they don't have the mental accuracy to be actually making a decision at the end of the call and being successful in the program. This is called attribution, guys. If people do not have accurate attribution, they are not going to be successful in anything. You need to make sure that they can see you've been doing this for 6 months. You then decided to book in a call. Please help me explain what was this turning point moment here. And if they're like, oh, it was after I booked in the call with you, you gave me clarity. It's like, well, no, because on a timeline, this and you booking in a call happened before we had a sales call. If you can't explain this to someone, they're not going to be successful, because they also know that they're talking bullshit to themselves, probably subconsciously, but they're aware. They're aware that the reason they've now realized they need to make a change is not because you've now had a sales call with them. You need to be patient enough to give people time to show them that this actually happened, that there was a turning point and they decided, I need outside help. Yeah, people can say that, Martin, but they'll say that if you haven't been sharp during the rest of the call. Like, no one's going to say, let me give an example using this prospect. Okay, Zion, so I understand you spent 6 months using an intuitive approach that was watching free content on YouTube, reading charts yourself, and following a Discord group. 864 hours spent later, you've only made $300. Is that accurate? Yes. So what was the turning point? Oh, I saw an ad. They're not going to say that. They're not going to say that when you've just laid out so clearly to them how ridiculous their approach has been and the lack of results. They're not going to turn around and say to you, Well, nothing changed. I just saw an ad one day. No, they know full well that those ads don't just pop up randomly. But if you just say, and if you're rushing through the call, trying to get to the why now, trying to get to the turning point moment, and you try and speed up, which actually slows you down instead of slowing down to speed up, and you just say, okay, got it. So you're not making any money. You've only made $300. What was the turning point? Oh, it was, I saw an advert. They'll say that. If all you've gathered is that they've only made $300, they've been trading for 6 months, and they're not happy with their results, they'll try and tell you the only thing that changed is I just saw an ad that popped up. Whereas if you go deeper and deeper and deeper and gather all the data and string it all together for them, they're not going to tell you I just saw an ad, because it would go against the obviousness of what's actually been happening. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Probably go another 5-10 minutes, folks. Go from wherever you want, Malek.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't remember the last thing you said.
I don't even know either. Yeah, just still on the 6 month thing. So just ask it in a different way again if you want.
Yeah. Okay.
You basically, you're trying to find out, having done this for 6 months, spent
Yeah.
864 hours and not made any money, what was the turning point? And
Okay.
it definitely wasn't the calendar went from month 5 to month 6. That's not the turning
Yeah.
point.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the previous thing you said, so I'm just gonna pull it back from there. It might be a bit repetitive, but okay. Yeah, I can obviously appreciate 6 months is a long, but 5 months, 4 months, that is long enough as well. So I'm curious what got you to book this call in the first place.
Yeah, like obviously with my approach, like when I go down, like I'll find myself trading more and end up losing more because it's like I'm almost just trying to get back up and it like maybe turns into a little bit of gambling. And this past month, like I went down pretty bad. Like I finished up 300, of course, which I mean brought me back to the green over the past 6 months, but I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole and turn it into like gambling because that's not the reason why I want to do this.
Just so I'm clear, so did you have a point this month where you went down pretty badly?
Yeah,
What was that? What happened there?
I just lost and then kept going and it kept losing. And I just like had to cut it off. But yeah,
So how much money did you lose that day?
2000.
Okay. So you lost $2,000 in one day, and is that what got you? Okay, I asked the freaking closed-ended question again.
Go one layer deeper on that $2,000, Malek. What do we need to know about that $2,000? Let me ask you a question. Is $2,000 a lot of money, Malek?
To lose per day, I think it is.
For who?
Okay,
The answer
depends.
is it
Okay.
depends. So for this individual, Malek, what does it depend on? What would make it a big amount and what would make it a small amount?
His budget, like how much he makes, how much
That
he
that
earns.
that would affect it as well. To chunk it up a little bit, what makes it a big amount or a small amount? Just like what we trained on in Carbo, what makes dropping 100 grand on a watch a big amount or a small amount is your personal financial thermostat. And your financial thermostat is based on your experience, your history. So the question that's going to determine whether it's a lot of money or not a lot of money would be something like, so you lost $2,000 in one day. How did that compare to previous losses? Oh, that was 10x my previous losses. Now we know that that's a big amount because of relativity. Everything is relativity. Is $100,000 a lot of money on a watch? No, it's fucking cheap compared to a Richard Mille, which is 300 grand. It's a lot of money compared to a Casio, which is 30 grand. So what we need to know is relativity. Okay. So the question deeper that you need to go is, okay, so that day you lost $2,000. How did that compare to previous losses? Oh, that was 10x. Now we know why that was a turning point. So you having a loss that was 10 times larger than, well, actually, we don't know why. We need to ask. So why did having a loss that was 10 times larger than any loss you've made before change something for you? I'm going to keep asking the prospect.
Oh,
Why did that change something? Well, because I'm now thinking, and he might say something like, I'm now realizing that I could just keep losing significantly more money. But I'm also realizing if I lost 10 times more than I've ever lost before, if I had a different approach, maybe I could win 10 times more than I've won before. So now what's happened is not that month 5 turned into month 6. It's that what's happened for him is his perspective has shifted based on a recent loss that was 10 times greater magnitude than anything he's ever experienced before. So we now know that the turning point was a perspective shift. Does that make sense, folks? Put in the chat if that makes sense.
yeah.
Just because he says, oh, I lost $2,000. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, guys. If you really want a kindergarten version of how to do this, the baby steps, in your head, all you need to ask yourself is what? Put in the chat, guys. If you want to know the basic way to do this, the words that you should have in your head is so what? I
Okay.
lost $2,000. So what? Well, that was 10 times more than I lost before. So what? Well, I mean, now I've realized blank, blank, blank. If you're ever confused, just refer back to so. And so, question mark, if I type this in the chat, guys, so question mark is basically curiosity. So you're basically like, I don't get it. Like, so what? I don't understand. I'm confused, which is humility, curiosity. It's all of those different things. Okay. Making sense?
Well, yeah, it makes a lot of
If you
sense.
really were stuck, Ivan, yes. I mean, I'd rather you ask the right question from the right intention, which is, I'm confused, I don't understand, and I'm going to therefore be curious to understand, than try and ask a very well-crafted question from the wrong place. The intention matters 80 to 90%. The words that you say is like 10 to 20%. If your intention is, I'm going to go deeper, I'm going to go deeper, I'm going to let the prospect explain to me, I don't understand, I'm curious, I'm trying to figure this out, that's going to take you 100 times further in sales than trying to figure out the right ways to word things. Okay. Whereas what Melek was
Okay.
doing, which is why it was going in the other direction, is she asked the question, you know, how much did you lose? 2,000. And in her mind was, okay, what's the next question? Like the next category of data gathering, as opposed to thinking for a second, do I understand the situation around that $2,000? And the honest answer is no, I don't get why. I mean, I get why it's a lot of money if Melek was putting her own personal financial thermostat as the judge. Oh, $2,000, fuck, that's a lot of money for me. Well, maybe it is a lot of money for you, and maybe you do have the same financial thermostat level as someone else, but you need to know why their financial thermostat was at that level, just like your financial thermostat was at the same level. You need to go deeper and understand the why. Why is $2,000 a lot of money for you? Okay. As
Yeah.
opposed to just thinking $2,000 is a lot of money because it's a lot of money for me. Well, then you're just putting your ego in the conversation.
Josh, this was a massive light bulb moment for me because I realized I always put myself in the prospect's shoes, but actually that's a bad habit, right? Because I'm like, okay, I can imagine how that must feel. I can imagine how that's a big number. I can imagine this, that, but I shouldn't imagine.
Yep.
I should like let him come to me.
Yep. Let me draw this as a visual so you understand the difference, because we trained this recently where I said you do need to put yourself in the prospect's shoes. This was with Jacob, in terms of you need to feel what's going on. Please concentrate on this, guys, because this is micro details, excuse me, that make all the difference. Okay. So this is Zion, and this is, we'll do a different color. This is, let's do red. This is Melek. Okay. Melek asked Zion what is going on. And Zion turned around and said, I lost $2,000. Okay. Now, when we're talking about putting yourself in the prospect's shoes, please notice the two differences. Putting yourself in the prospect's shoes is not this. Melek, with her opinions and her perspectives and her reality, looking over at that number and going, wow, in my reality, this piece of data is a big deal for me, $2,000, and therefore Melek now has a sad face. She's like, wow, $2,000, that's a load of money. That is not putting yourself in the prospect's shoes. That is you looking at this piece of data through your eyes, through your lens. Compare that, guys, to this. Zion says it's $2,000. And Melek now wants to know, how does Zion feel? And so as she asks Zion, you know, what was it about that $2,000? Zion's aura, his emotional experience of his situation, turns into sadness. Like the aura, like imagine it like a weather pattern. Before asking this question, Zion is stood here basking in the sun, having a lovely day. Before Melek asked this, Melek then asked this, and all of a sudden, a big cloud comes along and covers the sun, and it starts chucking it down with rain. And now Zion is now stood here in the cold, in the rain, frigid and freezing. And Melek then says, you know what? I want to feel what it feels like to be Zion. So she walks over here and she stands in the rain with Zion and goes, fuck me, it's cold over here. It's wet over here. It's not nice over here. That is what we mean by feeling the prospect's experience. You have to find out what their current weather is. How's the weather over there? And you have to go stand in their experience, as opposed to, if I draw this again, Melek looking over there at Zion in the rain, and she's just looking over and going, oh, it must suck to be in the rain. I don't like the rain. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't like the rain either, and you're just imagining that you don't like rain. You haven't actually walked over and felt what his experience is of that situation. Does that make sense as far as the difference, guys?
Yeah,
You
this is
have
wild.
to get into his reality of what $2,000 means to him, as opposed to you just looking at it and going, oh shit, $2,000 would make me feel like I'm in scarcity. You've got to, and this is why one of the best presidential ever elections was, I'm pretty sure it was Bill Clinton, his election campaign phrasing was, I feel your pain. Not I understand your pain, I feel your pain. I'm experiencing it. Oh, what the fuck? I'm experiencing it with you. Okay, that was his, pretty sure it was Bill Clinton. I feel your pain. Okay? If you want to be highly influential, you have to be able to feel their pain. Not go, oh, I understand it because I don't like rain, or I understand it because $2,000 would be a lot of money for me. No, you have to get into his reality and say, okay, what was it about that $2,000? Well, that's 10 times more than I'd ever felt before. Okay, so, well, it made me feel this way and this way. And now you're actually experiencing the clouds and the rain and the cold and what it feels like to be him. Bill Clinton. Thank you, Habib. Does that make sense, everyone? The difference? Do not just look at the data and bring your assumptions over there. You have to feel the data with them. You can't do that if you don't ask them, how's the weather? Which is, what was the issue with losing $2,000 in a day? Well, the issue was, it was 10 times more. Or he turns around and says, the issue is, I only make $2,000 a month in my day job as a realtor, and losing that in a day made me realize two things. And this is critical, guys. I'm so close, but I'm also so far. If I lose $2,000 in a single moment, I'm so close to leaving my real estate job, but I'm also so far. And that may have been the big thing, is he never realized how close he was until it was the amount of money that he makes in a month as a realtor. And then he's like, fuck, like I'm so close, but I'm so far. Does that make sense? We've got to know the relativity of what this meant. And the relativity is, two people can be in the same place, but be in different weathers. because bear in mind, weather can be external, but also weather can be internal. Two people can be on the beach, chilling on the beach on a sun lounger, right? They're sitting there, they're on their sun lounger, they're getting sun. You know, person two's here, sitting there, and they're both on their sun loungers, and they're both under the sun, right? This person feels the heat of the sun. This person is going through a divorce with their wife. They're going to feel like they're under a big black cloud and it's pissing down with rain on them, even though it's not actually, but that's going to be their relativity of their situation. Don't look at the $2,000, which is we're both sitting in the sun. No. How is $2,000 for you? Well, for me, it's no fucking money and I feel amazing. For him, oh, it's loads of money because, you know, my wife's divorcing me and I've got no money left and blah, blah, blah. We need to understand relativity. Now,
Yeah,
how do
can
you
I ask a
understand
question on that?
relativity? One sec. How do you understand relativity? Curiosity, guys. You got to be curious. Go on, Zion.
In this case, would you gather data around the relativity first, or just ask them, well, why, like, how does it feel losing that amount of money? Or like, was that the turning point?
I wouldn't ask how do they feel because I need to know why. I need to know why before how. Like, if I said, how did it feel? He could just say, oh, it was bad. Oh, it was terrible, man. $2,000 is a lot of money. Better to say, why was losing that $2,000 recently on month 6? Why was that a turning point? Oh, it was a turning point because of blank. Okay. And so realizing that that $2,000 was the difference between you being able to quit your job and your monthly income as a realtor, when you lost that amount of money and saw it come out in a single day, knowing what that means to you, how did that make you feel? Oh, it made me feel I'm so close, but I'm yet so far and I can do it, but I need help and I need a new approach. But okay, that makes sense. So if I'm understanding clearly, Zion, you've been doing this for the last 6 months. You spent 864 hours. You've only made $300 total, which was actually month after month, loss. And then recently you had a little bit of money. But the turning point for you in regards to your approach, which has previously been intuition from free content on YouTube, Discord, and trying to read the charts on your own, the turning point was when the amount of money that you lost in a single moment was the same amount of money that would get you out of your real estate job. That was the turning point for you where you realized this can be everything or it can be nothing. And the difference is I need a different approach. Is that accurate? Now he's like, holy shit, we've connected everything together. It all makes total sense. Okay, beautiful. So let me ask you, now you know that you need a different approach and you know you need it now because you've had that awakening moment with the $2,000. What different approach do you think you need? Oh, I need whatever you sell, the training, the coaching, the mentorship, the different style of trading. Okay, why? For this reason, this reason, this reason. Okay, that makes sense. Why us? Okay, now you've done the selling bit. Okay, so let me ask you, Zion, how much longer do you not want to have this approach, and this approach, and instead be following your intuition from YouTube and from free content and Discord and reading charts, knowing that the difference between these two approaches, you've now realized is the difference between you having to stay in real estate or you having those $2,000 days or $2,000 monthly income where you could get out of real estate. How much longer do you want to be on the wrong side of those different approaches? Now he's like, oh, not another day. And now we've connected it all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Seems like Ben and Jay had their mind blown with that. I personally, guys, I
No,
find
this
it
is insane.
fascinating that it blows your mind when all I'm doing is like just stacking all the things together. So I'm going to bring up Jay and I'm going to bring up Ben and we'll wrap up here, guys. We'll go into Q&A. And I'm going to ask Ben and Jay and anybody else that had their mind blown with that, put your hand up. Why that is mind blowing for you. I'm very curious. All right, Jay first. Here we go. What's up, brother? You're on mute. Can't hear you.
Why this blows my mind is because I've been doing it wrong all the time. That's the bottom line. Why it blew my mind, you know. So yeah, I've not been stacking that data consistently and properly. So yeah, that's where I went wrong. So now this makes way more sense to do it like this and actually stack everything together and then ask the how much longer question like that. Yeah.
And so given, at least in my opinion, I think I've demonstrated that a number of times. Why was this time different for you as far as now it clicked? Why do you think this was different?
Well, I would say it clicks more over time, right?
Sure. Okay.
It's a little bit of a, it's, for me, it's a challenge to really, I'm in month 2, right? So really wrap my head around the whole scriptless,
Yeah.
but it's starting to click more and more and more over time. So that's why why it's getting better and better and better for me.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, month 2, you're brand new into this, and it's a wildly different approach. So it makes total sense.
Exactly. Right. I'm getting a little bit frustrated sometimes, but I like going like based over time. I know I need to be a little bit more calm with it,
100%.
So that's it.
Love it. All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, brother. Ben, what's your breakthrough? What's up, brother?
Yeah, the big breakthrough for me is I get the data, get the ownership, get the why now, but I've always kind of stumbled connecting the dots. So just seeing how you do that, it just kind of clicked for me. So I'm like, oh, it's a natural going from once you get the impact and how it's making them feel, then summarizing that, they're like, okay, it makes sense now. What do you need? And it just seems way more natural. So I think that's going to be good.
The final 5 minutes of data gathering, which is now data gathering in terms of what changes do they need and why do they want it from us. That bit is so basic, it's crazy. And you then shift your energy back into seriousness when you lay out all of the points before your how much longer question. So you've kind of got this digging into pain, getting serious, having a really serious conversation, turning point, all of that. Then you as the closer have the click moment of like, okay, now I can see what's going on. You present that to the prospect and they say, oh, wow, shit. Yeah, that all makes sense. And you've kind of had the data gathering has now done the sale. It's done they're going to make a change. They've got the motivation to do it. They've had the realization of what's been going on. They've admitted to you a commitment to make a change. Then you come out the other side of like the deep, emotional, heavy conversation, which is, okay, what do you need to make the change? Why do you need it from us? That bit is super quick. You just come out the other side and then you're at the top again and you come all the way back down into, okay, so you've done this. This has failed. This has failed. The impact of this is this. You've had the realization. You need this. You need this. You need this. You want it from us for this reason. And you're right back down into the heavy conversation. How much longer? How many more days? Are you ready to actually make this change? Yes. And then boom, you come out the other side and it's like transition and you're into your pitch. Does that make sense, everyone?
Perfect sense.
Beautiful. All right. We have a few more questions. Yes, Jay, that's exactly what people mean by emotional roller coaster. Yes. All right. We'll bring up Don.
Hey, Josh.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I got a question. Keep in mind, I'm brand new, just like 2 weeks in, so I haven't gotten into the scriptless stuff yet, but I've implemented the 4 call pillars into my calls. And I had a situation come up the other day where basically we got into objections before I actually ever dropped the price, right? So, hey, do you have any questions before whatever? Well, then he's like, oh, I got to think about it, this and that. And so we're going in this whole think about it thing. And I'm like, bro, how are you thinking about it? You don't even know what the price is. You don't even know what the investment is. So how do you deal with that? Or is that just something I need to wait about?
Basically the way you already knew, because you were like, what are you thinking about before I've told you the price? So that now becomes the conversation that you need to have with the prospect that you're concerned about. You're like, okay, so what I'm very confused about, Don, is you're already giving me a bunch of reasons to not make a decision, but we haven't even gotten into what we do. And so, I mean, you could hear what we do and you could think this is the best thing and I wish I'd done this 5 years ago and could have become a client. Or you could—
Hold on 1 second, Josh. Hold on. No, this is after the pitch. So this is the final the temp check.
Okay, got it. I misunderstood.
I apologize.
But they don't know the price.
No.
Okay, same thing.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm wondering, Don, is we've gone through what we've got going on over here. We've gone through your situation. We had a chat about, or had a discussion about what changes you need to make. You're now clear of what we do over here. I'm very confused why, before you even know the investment and all those details of how we process that, you're already telling me reasons that you couldn't make a decision. Now, the reason I bring that up is we could go through the investment and you could say, I'm never going to make a decision on this because I don't see the value for that investment. Or we could go through it and you could go, wow, for what it's costing me and the amount of time I've spent and the confusion and the fact it's affected me in this way, this is a drop in the bucket in comparison. But my concern is, why are you making a decision, or at least prematurely making a decision before we've gotten into that? So now I'm putting it back on the prospect, like, you need to explain this to yourself and explain it to me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's what you're doing. Is like, basically, I don't get it. You're already creating an answer to a question that you don't have all the details on. And then he's gonna really like writhe. He's gonna be like, oh shit, like, oh, I don't really know how to respond to this. And you need to stay on them a lot in that situation, because that's a deep seated habit and coping mechanism that is not serving them. And so, like, even if he admits to me, oh yeah, it's probably, that's how I've always been, and I typically start trying to unsell myself from something. Okay, let me ask you, how many times have you done that? What does it cost you? And I'm basically going to go into a mini discovery back into how it's affected him, the time, the money, all of the lost opportunities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you just tried doing it again. Shall we just leave this call here then, if you're going to continue with that cycle, knowing what it's costing you? No. Why not? What was the turning point? I'm going to ask the same questions I would ask in discovery. What was the turning point? Oh, the turning point was this. And he'll probably say, the turning point was you're the first person that challenged me. Well, I'm sure there's probably other people that have challenged you. And I'm sure there's probably moments you've tried challenging yourself. What was the turning point before this call in your life regarding this situation, where now you are actually willing to accept that challenge and go through that challenge? Well, I guess the reason why is 5 years into this stupid habitual decision-making process, I've now realized it's cost me so much. When did you have that realization? Why was $2,000 a lot of money for you? And I'm just going to do the same thing I would do in discovery. The most important thing is, when you get things like that, you don't budge. Just like what I've been teaching Malek here. You have to do what you need to do. If you let it slide, you won't close them. You got to do it at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, guys, does anybody else have any questions or feedback or takeaways? Oh yeah, we've got Passer and Emil. All right. If you've got anything, guys, put your hand up now in the next 10 seconds, or if you don't put it up now, you will not have a chance to speak, because this was a long call, 2 hours, I think.
Hey, Josh.
Right. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm great. So I remember on past trainings, you said that people buy when they're in lower levels of consciousness, like when they feel guilt, when they feel shame. But you also told Melek that we want them to feel like power. So how do you balance this? Do you want them to be empowered? Do you want them to be guilty? Like, what is it?
When you start looking deeply at emotions and a lot of things, which is why things are pendulums that actually go in a full circle, they're both connected at the end. So like, if someone's in guilt and shame, they feel the weight on them. They're like, oh shit, like I need to do something. I'm in a bad place. I have to do something about it. What you don't want them in is apathy. Apathy is like the middle, where there's no power and there's no guilt or shame. If they're in guilt or shame and you connect it to why are they guilty and why are they in shame, the reason why someone is in guilt and in shame is what? Because they know it's their fault. You can't be guilty about something. You don't feel guilty about something that you know was not your fault. So if you get someone in guilt and shame, they also have the power from the ownership of, if you ask them, why are they feeling guilty and why are they feeling shameful? Why are they in pain? Why is this a problem? Why do they need to solve it? They're now having to say, the reason I need to solve it is I've chosen to be in this situation. So they both, they like go around and they connect back in the middle. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Just don't have your prospects in apathy, which is, oh, it's nothing. It's not that bad. There's nothing I can do about it. That's the only emotion you don't want prospects in, is apathetic. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome, brother. Jay? Last one from Jay.
Yes. How's it going?
Excellent.
Cool. I just had a takeaway because I reviewed a call from Lee yesterday. He sent it over to me because I'm starting on a B2B offer. He's on Devin's offer selling B2B, so I wanted a call example from there. And I noticed that I think a major reason that this guy bought was because of how sharp Lee was on the call. One of the things the prospects was saying was like, yeah, one of the reasons I want to work with Devin is, he doesn't fuck around in his content. And then I get on a call with you and you don't play around at all. And when we're on this role play right now, we're building up the data, we're building up all the little details. While we're building up this story, that's a major element to it, but also the prospect is just getting the sense that these guys do not play around. And when they drop the price and when they drop this product, like I would feel so stupid to not go with a company that takes it this serious. So that was my big takeaway from this call.
Massive. I've said it once, I'll say it another 100 times, guys. People buy you. They're not on the phone with the business owner. Sure, they've watched their content, but at the moment of transaction, they're on the phone with you. And they are buying into, do I think this representative of my future decision working with this business owner on this offer, on this service, do I think this representative is someone I want to align myself with? That's why as a business owner, it's so critical that you train your closers to be on the ball, not to be good at reading a script, because you'll actually lose a lot of prospects because the prospects are realizing this person's just following a cookie cutter script and they're not really listening and they're not really present. They're not connecting all the dots and saying sharp things like I said about the intuition. They're just viewing the offer and the service through that lens of how do I view the closer? So yeah, massive, Jay. It's why you've got to become a very high value person as a closer, because people buy you as much as they buy the offer or the service. 100%. Great realization. All right, we're going to have two final realizations or questions or takeaways from Zion and Melek, and then we're going to wrap up. Zion, any realizations?
Yeah, I mean, a full page of notes of them. I think one of the main ones was definitely just, their commitment is based on, the gap, right? That was a huge one. Because if the gap is small, then they'll give you answers. And I think that's something that I've been going through. Like, okay, I'm getting the answers, but when it comes to the end of the call, there's not enough substance to actually, make a decision and close the deal, right? So that's huge. And then as far as like the putting yourself in the prospect shoes, that was a big one too. Just with that drawing, not just like projecting your own perception, but getting how they feel and then understanding how they feel based on their own answers after your question. So yeah, those are two big ones for sure.
Great takeaways. Awesome stuff. Melek, what was your big
For
takeaway?
sure. Thank you so much for your time, Josh. Honestly, this was incredible. So many takeaways from my side as well. Just like Zion mentioned, like that weather example, feeling the weather with them, that definitely hits. Relativity aspect, for example, asking, okay, how did that compare to the previous losses? That's major. And I feel like being in trading offer with my specific offer too, I feel like that's extra important. That's definitely something I'll focus on a lot. And of course, overall, this role play session helped me identify my blind spots as well. For example, a lot of closed questions. And I was also noticing too, with my core reviews, I'm saying a lot of, is it this, is it that, is it this? And then when you say it like that, even you asked me to, which example was that? I think I was asking Zion, okay, so is it weekdays or is it weekends? And you made me ask that question in an open-ended way too. I feel like I'll never forget that example. That really made like kind of ingrained it into my brain as well.
Yeah. If we do it just with the most basic questions, we then start doing it with
Yeah.
the harder questions. If you're asking super simple questions like, oh, is that Saturday and Sunday, or how, as opposed to how many days a week is that, then you're going to start practicing that habit of asking close-ended questions when it gets more difficult to ask a open-ended question about something. So practice it from the ground, base ground, and have the foundations of being open-ended questions, and then you'll just build on top of that for all of your questions. So yeah.
For sure.
All right, folks, Awesome to see you all. I'll see you all next week. Remember, we have Close Me week. So we're doing a different style of role play. Those have all been uploaded into school. So I'll see you folks to be closed by me, and I'll see you inside school. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
You're
See you
very
guys.
welcome.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye. All right. You've seen the details that we go into in the Unicorn Closer Mastermind. You've heard from the members how those details are the differences between closing the amount of sales that you're closing right now and closing the amount of sales that you want to be closing. Closing the amount of sales, which will actually be generating you the money that is going to change your life. For me, mastering sales has completely changed my life. Where I live, how I live, the people I can spend time with, the items that I can buy, taking care of my parents, everything and anything that I ever wanted to achieve, I've been able to get on the ladder of achieving each of those things one by one by mastering the things that we're going through in this call. The same story has been the case for members of the mastermind. We have people like Christian Para, went from earning $9,000 a month to $35,000 a month and bought his first home, bought an apartment, a place on the property ladder. We had Pete Clements, same thing, increased his income from $3,000 a month to $20,000 a month and bought his dream car. The difference between you buying the things you want to buy and living the life that you want to live is all the things that we're training inside these live calls. If you want to have the opportunity to participate in these calls, to be the closer, to be the prospect, to be on the 4 or 5 hour live call we do every single Wednesday, below this video is a link to join the Unicorn Closer Mastermind. And remember, how you show up as a buyer when it comes time for you to make a decision is how your prospects are going to show up. So show up the way that you want your prospects to show up. Decisive, committed, and taking rapid action to actually get the inputs that will get you the outputs that you want in life. The training, the mentorship, the support, and the community. If that's something that you're finally ready to take action on, you want to go to the next level, click the link below this video, and I'll see you on the inside of the Unicorn Closer Mastermind.